Thank you for downloading this RealAgriculture podcast. Excite your crops with inputs from Excite Bio. Access nitrogen and phosphorus with Excite Bio's lineup of inoculants and ag biologicals. Since 2010, they've been helping farmers harness the power of the soil. Learn more at excitebio.ca. That's XITEBIO.ca.
Good day, and welcome to Wheat Pete's Word here on Real Agriculture for Wednesday, November the 20th. On this episode of The Word, a safety scare. Wow! Cool stuff and cool opportunities, weed control, some agronomy answers, and at the end, a more tillage discussion. Some really neat things people are telling me and seeing out there as they do their fall tillage. Let's go! And before we get totally underway, 1 minute of shameless Wheat Pete self-promotion. Hey, I don't do personal things very often, but some of you would like to know, I'm sure, because you come and see me once in a while. Wheat Pete will once again be on stage starting November the 29th at the Ingersoll Theatre of Performing Arts. That's Itopa in Ingersoll. The run is from November 29th to December 8th. The play title is The Play That Goes Wrong. It is absolutely hilarious. At least I hope it is. So if you're interested at all, you're in the Ingersoll area, buy a ticket, come on out, and have yourself a good chuckle. And moving from a good chuckle to a holy crap moment, Randy sending me an email. And it's basically saying, Pete, thanks for talking about safety, because your thought process may have prevented a significant accident, maybe even saved someone's life. I'm not looking for a pat on the back here. I just want people to know about safety. So Randy said, they're pulling out on a busy highway, and his son is driving the tractor with the disc ripper. And I'm going, oh, disc rippers, I hate disc rippers, but that's a whole nother discussion. Busy highway on a curve, and Randy is following in the pickup truck. His son pulls out, Randy pulls up to the end of the laneway, looks and can just see a transport on the curve coming around the corner. He thinks, and this is what he said in the email, he thinks, what would Pete do? He pulls out on the road, puts his four ways on, and goes slow so that this transport coming behind that cannot see his son and the disc ripper will slow down. Sure enough, transport slows down. Half a mile up the road, they are turning left into their farmstead. He's up behind the disc ripper. The son puts on his left signal. Randy puts on his left signal, thinks we're all good. What does the transport do? Accelerates and passes them both. And in Randy's email, he said he was still shaking. Thankfully, no one did turn left into the way of that oncoming transport. It was a feed truck. You know, should have been aware of agriculture being a feed truck. But the whole point of this story is not only to, remind you about road safety and lights and turning off the four ways, to turn on the left signal, all of those things, which Randy all did, but it's sort of like Pete losing the draw bolts out of the wagons. How do we prevent that happening again or moving forward? And Randy, here's my thought process. Man, if you are in that situation, you turn your left signal on, you think you've got it covered, but the flashers have been going. Oftentimes, when I'm in a pickup truck following an agricultural vehicle, I know they're turning left. I'm turning left behind them. I will take my hat off. I will stick my hand out the window with my hat in a left turn position, because that added movement, that added visual stimulation maybe is something they will see and prevent them from pulling out and passing you, which that truck definitely should not have done. Anyway, thankfully, everybody's safe. We can take a deep breath. Everybody's safe. And please continue to think these things through. Think twice, act once, stay safe. Enough on that. Let's get into some really cool stuff. So first off, don't forget the Ontario Ag Conference, SWAC, MWAC, Eastern Ontario, get registered. Registrations are going really quite quickly for these conferences. The in-person component is limited, so if you want to go to one of those conferences in person, get registered. Just go to ontarioagconference.ca. You can decide what registration package you want there. As well, the Ontario Cereal Crop Committee spring cereal trials are now available. Go to gocrops.ca and have a quick look. Man, sometimes the value of what we put up there is just outstanding. If you look at the oat data, the intensive trials, which means we sprayed them with a fungicide, that's all it means we did, versus the unsprayed, the standard trials, in oat, in Area 2, we got a 44.5% yield increase, almost a 50% yield increase, and we decreased lodging from unsprayed at 6.8, flat is 9, so almost everything was just about flat, to a 0.2 where everything was just standing perfectly. And you go, what the heck? How did that be? That is crown rust. Crown rust in oats is absolutely devastating. It reminds me, or actually tar spot in corn reminds me of crown rust in oats. When we start talking about trials where we get an 80 bushel yield increase, so we go from 160 to 240, well, it depends on how you do the math. It's a 33% yield increase or 50% yield increase if you look at it the other way. It's just go like, wowzers, baby. Those diseases have major, major ramifications, and you can look at the data. It's cool data, and sort out some of those neat things, as well as what new varieties there are out there. As well, the Ontario Corn Committee data is up on gocrops.ca. You can have a look at that. It is corn season, so look at those top hybrids, some really outstanding hybrids in that lineup. What I noticed as I went through the Corn Committee trials, unbelievable yields. So the lowest average in Area 1, and still a 2 or 3 site average, the average yield 210 bushels per acre. The top, which was Area 5, the longest season area, makes perfect sense. The longer the season, typically more the yield. 262 bushel per acre average across the trials. In that Area 5 trial, the top hybrid was an index of 113, so that means 13% above the average. When you do that math, across 3 locations in 2024, the top hybrid averaged 296 bushels per acre. That is nothing short of incredible, man. Just absolutely incredible. Hey, just before I get into weed control, a couple other cool things. Andrew Whitelaw, so his Twitter handle is @WheatWatcher. He tweeted out a chart. It's just amazing. So wheat prices today are just off their 760-year low. So that means wheat prices are in the sewer. Now, it's inflation adjusted. It's a 10-year moving average. And they were lower in the last calculation than they are this time, but not by much. And you just go, wow, how does that work? And if you look at the chart, it comes back to the Green Revolution. They were sort of in a fairly banded value until we hit the 1940s, 50s, 60s, somewhere in that range, where we got herbicides and fungicides and better hybrids, better varieties, and also fertilizer. And since then, we have been able to supply the world demand on a pretty regular basis and have decent stocks to use ratios, and the price has gone down. It makes perfect sense. However, with the technology, it doesn't mean that we're making less money every time, but yeah, 760-year lows. I just thought that was absolutely amazing. Nick saying, hey, Peter, we broadcast cereal rye as a cover crop. Walked it, nothing there. The slugs have just about annihilated that cereal rye. And Nick's comment was, I hope they're gone by spring because we're going to plant soybeans there. Nick, the likelihood of the slugs being gone by next spring. And this is a challenge, man. Actually, I'm glad at least, Nick, that you know the slugs are a problem, because now you may have to decide to do a little bit more spring tillage to try to dry it out and slow those slugs up than what you would normally do. I know you're a no-till guy, but slugs on soybeans can really be decimating, no question about that. All right, I want to move on. I want to talk about fall weed control. And Dr. Dave sent me an email with a question saying, so Peter, I got the corn off, and I walked the cornfield, and I have Canada thistle patches, and I only have 60 to 70% green leaf tissue. We haven't had any -4 temperatures because Wheat Pete always says glyphosate works to -4. Is it worthwhile spraying that Canada thistle still this fall when it's November the 18th or whatever that date was? And so I just back up 2 steps and say, okay, Dave, first off, whenever I spray weeds in the fall, I always, in the spring, am impressed with the level of weed control. You just go, wow, in the fall it didn't look like anything, and we hurt them bad. We didn't annihilate them, but boy, we got pretty decent control. And my other response to Dave was, what are your options next spring? Because you're going to IP soybeans. So you can't spray dicamba in crop or enlist in crop. All we have is glyphosate as a burn down, and on Canada thistle, because it doesn't emerge that early in the spring, we just don't get good control. So 100% it is worth spraying the Canada thistle this fall. Dr. Dave tweeted that out. I cannot believe the number of people who came back and said they were spraying later than they'd ever sprayed before, and also the number of people who came back and said, man, every time we do this in the spring, we're happy that we did. Fall weed control simply works. So that's kind of a cool thought process. We still haven't had -4s. Yeah, it's getting tough to find a spray day, but I still think, in Ontario at least, man, it's Southern Ontario, you get a chance, I still think that fall weed control is worth it on perennial sow thistle, on Canada thistle, on dandelion. Mike Cobra with a great dandelion video here on Real Ag. We'll link it in the post. But one of the things he says right up front, you want to control dandelions, the best time is in the fall, and it takes 1.34 liters of a 540 glyphosate to do the job. And that's what it takes on Canada thistle and perennial thistle as well. You take that higher rate of glyphosate. Meanwhile, Terry Daynard tweeting back to Dave saying, you think that glyphosate is better than Lontrell? I use Lontrell on my fence rows. Well, Terry, Lontrell or 2,4-D or dicamba is the right choice in the fence row because we don't want to kill the grass. But out in the field, glyphosate this time of year is typically better. We like that better. Although Paul, my neighbor Paul, saying that he sprays his corn stalks all the time in the fall, late fall with 2,4-D. He did a field. He ran out one year. There was 6 acres left. He said, I'm not going back for that. The next spring, where he didn't spray, was wall-to-wall dandelions. Where he did spray was essentially no dandelions. So Paul is pretty convinced that spraying 2,4-D is one of those things you just have to do. Okay, I want to move on just quickly on the rest of weed control. Kevin saying he had sprayed his clover and his oats 2 weeks ago. They're still all green. It's cold. Glyphosate is going to be slow. Matt sending me some pictures saying, I sprayed my clover in my wheat stubble a month ago. Everything is brown dead except the clover. Do I spray the clover again? Both Mike Cobra and I saying, nope. You know, it looks green now, but in the spring, we're pretty sure that that clover is going to be gone, or the vast majority of it. It almost never survives, even though it really dies super slowly in the fall. All right, I want to move on. I got some agronomy stuff to talk about. First off, Dave saying, what about manganese on wheat this time of year? I think I've talked about this before, but man, if you have severe manganese deficiency, and Dave is saying that it's in the high organic matter areas in the fields, he can see it right to the line. It's typically where he sees manganese deficiency in soybeans. If you do not apply manganese on that wheat crop, in my experience, it will often be dead in the spring. And in fact, Dave's saying that he has applied manganese in the spring. His neighbor did not on wheat, and his neighbor's wheat died. His wheat did just absolutely fine. His neighbor thought his wheat died from frost, and Dave's saying, no, maybe it did make it more susceptible to frost because it was manganese deficient. But end of day, manganese deficiency in wheat is a big deal. If you have it, make sure it is manganese, because lots of yellow wheat out there is nitrogen and sulfur, and I'm not worried at all about that. But if you have manganese deficiency, get that stuff sprayed. Okay, moving on, a caller saying, Peter, what is the matter with my fall forage oats? I planted fall forage oats. I'm incredibly disappointed with my protein, 10% protein. Did I not put enough nitrogen on? Is fertilizer nitrogen better than the nitrogen in manure? And by the way, how much nitrogen is in 1,000 gallons of dairy manure? So let's back up 2 steps. Whatever stage you cut those oats at makes a huge difference. So if you didn't cut them till they were in full head, man, 10% protein's pretty common. If you want high protein oats, you have to cut at flag leaf or early boot stage. So that's answer number 1. Answer number 2 is in liquid dairy manure, there's somewhere between 10 and 20 pounds of nitrogen per 1,000 gallons. But did you incorporate it? Did you do a test? Because if you put on 5,000 gallons of dairy at 10 pounds, left it on the surface for a few days, lost a third or a half of that nitrogen, you didn't apply much nitrogen. Meanwhile, if you had put on 8,000 gallons of a higher nitrogen dairy manure and you incorporated it right away, you might have 150 pounds of nitrogen there, which is tons of nitrogen. So that's another thought process. And no, the nitrogen in fertilizer is no better than the nitrogen in manure, although some of the nitrogen in manure will be in the organic form. So it's just how you figure out what that available nitrogen is in that scenario. Tony saying, okay, Peter, how much mez can I apply on corn? I'm quite sure that phosphorus is my limiting factor. I have low phosphorus soil tests. I have high potash soil tests. And by the way, this is rented land. It's going to grow houses in about 5 years. How much mez can I put in a 2x3 band? Okay, so you back up 2 steps. And Tony, my first question or my first comment is, yeah, so if it's going to grow houses in 5 years, we are not building the soil test, not a chance. It's a year-by-year basis. Let's get the maximum bang for the buck. And yes, phosphorus is your limiting nutrient, but once you go past about 50 pounds of actual phosphorus, actual P2O5, you just don't get much more response. That's all the benefit you can really get out of a 2x2 band. We're rate responsive. You get much better response at 50 than you do at 10 or 15 pounds of phosphorus. But past 50, it's just almost like you've maxed out the response you can get in that band. So I don't see a point going past, you say your typical program is 160 pounds of mez in a 2x3 band. Man, that you're safe at that, and putting more on isn't going to put more bushels of corn in your combine bin, from what I can tell. So stay the course. I would also say do a trial, up it by 50%, put 240 on, tell me that I'm wrong. But at the end of the day, I just don't think you're going to pay back that fertilizer. And 160 is lots. My only comment would be, 2x3 band, you're 3 inches away from the seed, man, I'd try to go to 2x2 so that those roots found that phosphorus a little bit earlier. Corn needs that phosphorus early, just like wheat. Try to get it in there in a 2x2 band. It can go too close as well, but 2x2 is absolutely safe. Okay, I want to finish up here on tillage. I'm actually going to get to it. So Pete saying, all right, is anybody else having problems plowing down red clover. My red clover, I've never seen red clovers like this. It's, I don't know, waist high or taller. We can't plow it. We tried a rotary mower, and all it did was leave big bunches of clover. We tried a Lemken disc. It couldn't handle it. We finally tried a flail mower, and that was enough that we could chew it up and we can plow behind that flail mower. But is anybody else having this problem? By the way, Pete, you told me to not spray it until the end of October. I would double my root mass, and so that's what I did. It's what we standard do. But oh, what a massive clover we have. And all I can say to Pete is, what a wonderful problem to have. Too much clover, man. What you've done from a nitrogen standpoint for your corn crop, for the soil tilth, that's amazing. And yeah, having to hit it with the flail mower first, that is kind of a frown. But in any case, hopefully the value of that clover outweighs that extra trip across the field. So anybody else having that problem, we'd like to know. Jim saying, Peter, we had a planter issue. We had some spots where we didn't get any seed down, and they were too small to go back. We left them. I'm doing my fall tillage with, oh my gosh, again, this disc ripper. Oh my gosh, what is up with you people and disc rippers? Anyway, he says, when I hit those spots where there is no corn, it just pulls unbelievably hard. It's like I ran into a cement wall. The tractor works. Yeah, well, you know what? Jim, you're in an area that got a ton of rainfall this spring, and with no roots there, no crop to protect the soil from those atomic bomb raindrops, she's gone to cement. She is hard to pull. Alan, in the Thorndale area, where they got 6 inches of rain in an hour and a half or whatever, saying that he's going through after his edible bean crop with a inline ripper. He says, Peter, my gosh, the blocks are 1.5 feet by 1.5 feet by 1 foot deep that I'm bringing up. Like, they are just massive. This stuff is compacted out the yin-yang. It's really interesting to me that water will compact like that, because when I do the math, it's only 64 pounds per square foot. But it does something. There's no doubt about that. And Kevin, just to finish up on this, saying, Peter, like, wow, we had too much water. Where we got water laying in the spring, we're running through with an inline ripper, and just like Alan, it just pulling hard and it's blocky. After the wheat came off this September, when it was super dry, we hauled manure to the back field. We ran the same track with manure tanker after manure tanker after manure tanker. And I thought, oh, that would be compacted out the blazes. I go there with the inline ripper, nothing. It just didn't seem to compact at all. Dry soil does not compact the way that wet soil does. And Kevin, you picked the right year to do it. Good for you. And I like that outcome. All right, and with that, I am way out of time. That's it. That's all on behalf of the team here at Real Agriculture. This is Wheat Pete with the word. Hey, come see me on stage. You'll see a totally different Wheat Pete. It's an absolute blast. Keep the messages coming, and I will talk to you again next week. See you then.